All right, folks, rock and roll is here again. We are back with another album ranking. This one was a was a doozy, really. A long one. A lot of albums in this catalog, surprisingly, considering they've only made like two albums since 1990. Just imagine if they would have made a couple albums, it would be even longer. But anyhow, we are talking REO Speedwagon today. One of the great bands from the Midwest there. And to do REO Speedwagon, I have to go back to my good pal, Mr. Tom Jennings. Welcome.
Good pal. I love that. Good pal. Well, you are a good pal, Joe. I was like, my favorite when you had Lawrence Gowan, the interview him. I love the way he says Joseph in the Canadian. He's like, "Well, Joseph." So that was a pretty good Gowan, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. He's a great
But
guy.
yeah, he's a great guy. But we're not talking about Styx. We are talking about him indirectly because the Lawrence Gowan version, of course, REO Speedwagon's going out with Styx, but a lot of people kind of put REO Styx in the same category, and certainly they reached their heights at around the same time. They provided the soundtrack of my life, as I'm sure that they provided it for you as well.
Yeah, these two bands have toured each other numerous times over the years. Definitely a lot of similarities. They actually released a live album together, Arch Allies. There are a lot of good stuff with these two bands. But today's focus obviously is Kevin Cronin and REO Speedwagon.
Yes, it
And
is.
it's very interesting that this band has had so many lead singers. A lot of people might not be that familiar with it, because most of the people are so familiar with Kevin Cronin being there as long as he has. When he came back, obviously he wasn't always in the band, but he's been in and out a couple times, but he's been the mainstay ever since he came back for the REO Speedwagon album back in good old 1976. And thank goodness for that. Now, REO Speedwagon, obviously, we got 15 studio albums to rank. Five of those albums went platinum. Three of those albums went gold. So that's over half the catalog has been severely recognized here. And oddly enough, four albums never charted, and the first two and the last two. So that's a quite interesting there. So let's go ahead and dig right in. What do you got for your number 15?
Number 15. This time we mean it.
Are you sure?
1975. This time we mean it. Yes. So as you mentioned, REO Speedwagon had a slew of different lead singers, and they started out with a guy named Terry Luttrell, and then the second guy was third guy was Michael Murphy. So they went with Luttrell, then Kevin Cronin, and then Michael Murphy. And Mike Murphy did, I think, 3 records with REO, if I remember correctly. And of the 3, I just think that I don't know. This album just doesn't hold up well. It sounds dated. It lacks enthusiasm. Of the Mike Murphy albums, it's by far the weakest, and it may have been kind of the impetus for the change back to Cronin. It just, I don't know. I was kind of surprised. I'm not even a fan of the cover art. I think the cover art's kind of lousy too.
Actually, a lot of the earlier covers for REO aren't exactly the most popular ones with the catalog.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, this time we mean it. This was actually the last, like you said, the last album before Cronin came back. But actually, out of the three albums that Murphy sang on, this one actually charted the highest, oddly enough, at number 74. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. For me, it actually was a little bit higher just because I feel there's a couple other albums that are a little less deserving. But for this time we mean it, actually, for me, came in at number 10.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, these albums are all, I mean, seriously, my number 15 up until about number 9, that was a tough area to rank because they were all neck and neck going all the way through. So, you know, had an album had one more better song on it, it might have jumped past the rest of them, just, the way I go through my rankings, it just they all seem to have that middling, not too much standing out. As far as this time we mean it, I gave Reelin' is probably the best song on the album, which actually was on the Decade of Rock and Roll. And there's a song on there called Gambler that's pretty cool. So I give that as the underrated track of the album. But like you said, there's not really a lot to really love on this album. But I
Yeah,
guess,
I mean, it looks at back in that back. It doesn't seem like I'm kind of peeking right now at some of the songwriting credits, and it's like it feels like Rich Rath and maybe Rich Rath and Murphy just weren't on the same page. It looks like they're getting single writing credits on these. Murphy was, I don't. I know we kind of joked before we went on air, and we've talked about this that a lot of times we do these ranking shows, and there's one album that's really just a turd. Um, REO doesn't really have one that's just stands out as being just horrible, horrible. It's said this one, I don't know, just it just to me it just sounded dated. It's really weird, and I like the Mike Murphy stuff. I've got some stuff that's ranked a bit higher, but I don't know. This one just didn't do it for me. I when I went back through the catalog, I really tried to kind of like this one, but I couldn't find anything that really just was like, this is good.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the only other song of note on there that I could give was Dreamweaver, was actually not too bad. That was probably the third best song on the album. And then after that, that's all I pretty much have for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was painless. It was kind of like building a bridge.
Is that leading you to number 14 there?
What makes you say that? But yes, that is my leading. That did lead me directly to number 14, which is building the bridge. So we kind of went from one end of the era of REO, kind of early REO Speedwagon, at least in my mind, to one at the end. And I don't know, this one, to me, it feels it lacks something. It feels a little bit dated from its era. So like if you go to This Time We Mean It, it just sounds like every kind of 70s band, there's nothing special about it. And this album, mid 90s, it just by this point, I think you're looking at, Nirvana and all that stuff's coming along. So a lot of these classic rock bands kind of struggled to stay relevant as it was. But there's just, I don't know. It's not a horrible record, but there's nothing on here that really stands out to me. And yeah, I think is this the first one without yeah, this is the first one without Rich Rath too. So I think
No,
that
second one
it's the
without
second.
Rich Rath. Yeah,
Okay.
The
The
Earth, a
small.
Small Man, His Dog and a Chicken came out in 1990. That was after Gary left.
Okay, so that's coming up too. But I don't know. I feel like again, really REO. I mean REO. Let's be honest. The quintessential lineup is the Cronin Rich Rath stuff, and I think Gary doesn't get enough credit for REO's sound. With all due respect to Dave Amato, who's a great guitarist, but he's not Gary Richrath. Um, and even in terms of songwriting, I think Gary helped. I think Gary helped Kevin in terms of just Kevin as a songwriter writes these really beautiful songs, and Gary kind of wrote a little bit more gritty songs. So even if you think about we get to like Keep on Loving You, the influence of Gary on Kevin. So you take this beautiful ballad and then you add a little bit of that gritty guitar work into it, and it's important. But I don't know. I said this album, for lack of a better term, kind of bores me.
Yeah, it actually is the same ranking for me. I got it at number 14 as well.
Dang.
Obviously, it never charted. Oddly enough, I believe one of the songs on there, I think Clinton used it for his one of his campaigns, re-election campaign, building the
Very
song,
good. That's
building the bridge. Yeah,
building the bridge. Yes,
yeah,
yes. And then I think that was then I know he used to use "Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow," but I think that was the first campaign.
yeah,
So maybe this was his second campaign.
yeah.
But
This was his re-election campaign in
right,
'96. Yep.
yeah,
So, that song is probably the third best song on the album. I actually gave After Tonight as the song that actually stands out for me. And oddly enough, that one was written by Bruce Hall, the bass player. Obviously, I just feel that Cronin lost it here because there's he was such a great lyricist, wrote such great lyrics, great hooks, and there's nothing on here that has that really. After Tonight
Yeah.
is like a softer song. It's probably why it stands out better for me. But Bruce wrote it. I mean, so it just goes to show you, that at this point in time, this band just, didn't have anything really new to say. And it's unfortunate because, at that time, all those bands, Journey, Foreigner, all those band sticks that were all in that same cluster of groups, they could have helped keep things going, but they just didn't have the material really, and to keep things head above water, I guess is a good term to say. And they just
Yeah.
basically all drowned at this around this time.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely was a bit of drop off. I think with a lot of bands, it comes down to the audience. So you catch the late '70s, early '80s. I mean, that's really the sweet spot where a lot of their audience was in high school, and then right around this era, the audience is kind of they got kids. They may not have as much expendable income, so the concert attendance kind of drops off unless you remain relevant on some level. But a lot of those arena rock bands, you're right, they just struggled to come out with an album that captured the younger generation, and that would have been the only thing that really would have propelled them through that particular era. But I don't know, and I think the other thing is once you get to a certain level of fame and you've built a live set, you almost you almost don't need to do it anymore. I mean, this album, well, let's look at even just the first two on our list. This time we mean it and building the bridge. REO doesn't play anything from either one of those records ever. I mean, they don't need to. So, and I think probably it's probably going to be up till I get to at least number 11 on my list where there's even one song that they're playing live anymore.
Yeah, interesting. All right, well, what do you got for your next one? Let's go through these ones here. We got 13 now.
Find Your Own Way Home, which if I remember correctly, 2007. And this is the last full album of original material, right?
Sure
And
is. Sure is,
yeah.
yeah.
So let me say a couple things about this record. First off, I love the cover. I think it's a really good cover. Um, and this is a record that I really wanted to like, but I just can't. I mean,
I'm
I
with
don't.
you.
I just it's one of those things that I can kind of put in the car and just not. It's so weird. It's like I feel like these first three records and then definitely the next one as well, which I think we're probably going to be on the same trajectory. It's like you listen to them and they're not awful, but they're not great. Like it's just weird. It's like this. You don't hate them, but you want to love them, but you don't really love them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep, I
So
hear you. Yeah.
that's
Well,
what I got. I mean, I can't even think. The one song, the "Dangerous Combination" was Jim Peterick
yeah.
co-write with Cronin. I mean, I like that song, but I mean, that's the only one that I think is even worth mentioning as far as a track. I mean, but even that I don't think stands out enough to really carry the album. Said every song is just I don't know. It feels like they didn't take any chances on this record either. We've done the Styx rankings, and Styx has done a couple albums. I mean, Styx didn't do records for years. Then all of a sudden they decide to do records again. They do a couple of them that at least are somewhat ambitious. You know what I mean? Like they took some chances and it did some things that were a little bit different. Whereas I feel like with REO, they became really formulaic and like they were just I don't know. That's
Yeah.
that's my thought on it.
So mine, they came in at 15. So there you go, right there.
Yeah.
Album never charted. Um, I actually tried listening to this thing a few times just to see, like you said, I wanted to like it, just like you, but it just doesn't do anything for me. So the only songs that could find any good, Another Lifetime, I feel that's actually a pretty decent song. That's hides on the album, way down, like sixth track on the album. Everything You Feel is another one that's decent, tolerable. Um, but yeah, nothing really to, and that's the thing. They really needed to get back on the radio in some way, shape, or form. That would have definitely made a difference. But For some reason, they're more content and happy just writing these weird type of songs, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very formulaic, just no big hooks. I mean, just no hooks. I mean, to me,
Yeah,
that's like, you know,
that's
that's
what you
what makes it
need.
REO. Yeah, you need the hook. You need something that's
Yeah,
going to pull you in. So
exactly. All right, well, let's move on from this catastrophe and go to the next one.
number 12 is the worst album title in the history of arena rock. The Earth, a Small Man, His Dog, and a Chicken. Now,
Wow.
we know that from 157 Riverside Avenue, Kevin talked about smoking the J and having Gary call him up. Well, I think he was high when he came up with that album title. It's ridiculous. I guess it draws attention. In terms of a record, though, I mean, this one has a couple of high points on it. I like the song "Live It Up," and I like the final cut. No, not it's the second to last cut, "Liar," which is spelled out Liar, and that one's a little bit catchier. And I
What does
think
it
again,
stand for?
what does what does it stand for? Liar.
Hmm.
Why don't you tell us, Joey?
It's actually an acronym. Love is all right.
Love is all right. Yes. So love is all right. I would have remembered that, but I really didn't. You kind of caught me with my pants down, which it's a good thing the camera doesn't go down below my pants.
Ouch.
But I like that song too. I think that again, that's kind of clever. It's kind of a clever acronym, and it's an interesting song. I mean, it's got a bit of a twist to it in terms of the theme, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, but yeah, I like those couple cuts. But again, this kind of goes back, and I think as you said, this is the first one without Rich Raff.
Yep. And
Yeah, and
Gratzer.
yeah. Well, and I don't know that I'm sorry for all you Alan Gratzer fans out there. I don't know that the loss of Gratzer had as much of an impact on him as
Rich
the
Rat.
loss of Rich Rath did. I think Gratzer was a serviceable drummer. I mean, but it's almost like it's like Styx, John Panazzo, who is a great drummer, but very, very kind of it, he was reflected at time, And I mean, I think, Brian Hitt's a great drummer. He definitely adds a little bit of something to the drumming, but I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you on that.
Yeah.
Well, oddly enough, the Earth, a small man, his dog, and a chicken. It was number 13 for me, so I wasn't and didn't fare much better here. Um, it only reached number 129. They were expecting big things from this album because they really wanted to keep the ball rolling, but following the departure of Rich Rath, but obviously it didn't take. I actually got to see this tour. They played Shays with Alias. They just even in the concert, it just wasn't the same, you know,
Yeah.
without Gary there. It really wasn't, It was not a knock on Dave, but not having Gary up there, it made a difference, unfortunately, and not for the better. But I feel "Love Is a Rock" is a solid song. That song definitely is one that I consider one of the best REO songs. And then the other song that stands out for me is "Halfway." Kind of reminds you of almost like a little country flavor in the beginning, and then it kicks in more like a power ballad there in the middle of the song. Kind of a unique song, actually. Half country, half ballad. But Jesse Harms was the one that kind of came in my opinion, ruined the songwriting here. He wrote a lot of the songs with Kevin, and he wrote one himself. "Live It Up" is actually the one that you had mentioned. He wrote by himself. But they already had Neil Doughty. What do they need this other keyboard player for? It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, name harms. I mean, what do you expect? It's going to harm the sound.
I mean, Harms came from a reputable. I believe he was with Sammy Hagar at one point. Yeah, he worked with Sammy, Eddie Money. He's worked with some big people, but unfortunately, he just didn't mesh well with REO, and that's probably why he was gone as quick as he came.
Yeah. It looks like he worked with Roth, David Lee Roth, Bad English. Yeah. So he's probably kind of a journeyman keyboardist, but Yeah, but it's tough when you lose a primary member like that, and it again it goes. I mean, the thing is, you'd say what you want about Kevin. I mean, Gary was the one that founded the band, so
Exactly.
he was the one that really kind of helped create the sound. And but that when the two of them were in synergy, they were beautiful. They did beautiful things.
As we will discuss as we move on here. Yeah,
As we will.
definitely.
I know it sounds just like up to this point, REO fans got to be going, who are these old codgers complaining about everything having to do with REO? They don't know nothing. Kevin Cronin's the best. Hey, I love KC, man. Love him. So don't think we're hating on Kevin Cronin. Are we? No, never. That would be sacrilege. And coming in at number 11, another Mike Murphy, Riding the Storm Out. Not a bad record. Again, I think we're getting into not a bad record territory. We're not getting into like classic records yet, but we're getting into that kind of REO stuff that's good. I feel
Yep.
like Riding the Storm Out, it's an interesting album because it has Mike Murphy on vocals, but they started recording it with Kevin Cronin. And so it certainly has that Kevin Cronin influence to it. And I think if Kevin had stayed and recorded this album with him, it would have ranked much higher. But Murphy does a good job on the vocals. He does. I enjoy this album. It's not one I listen to a lot, but it's always cool too hearing like when you have a song like "Ride the Storm Out" that you're so used to as like became a signature song for Kevin. Uh, Later on in a live show to hear it sung by somebody else. And so it's interesting to see how the vocal phrasing is so much different. And I think going back to, we joked earlier about, whether we're Kevin Cronin haters or whatever. I mean, the thing about Kevin Cronin, his vocals is his phrasing. It's so unique. It's so cool. Just the way he phrases things, and you can't really replicate that. Mike Murphy, a great singer, but definitely more of kind of a straight ahead, I don't know, kind of that almost like gritty Southern Rocky type thing, I guess, for lack of a better term. So again, numero 11 for me, waiting for the fallout, full moon night, or Rocky Mountain winter. Have you ever driven through the Rocky Mountains
No.
when the sun comes down? Dude, I swear to God. And then I'll let you go. I did it once, and I got caught in the type of storm that they wrote about in this particular record. And in growing up in the Buffalo Rochester area with all the snowstorms that we've been through, I've never seen anything like it. It scared the living bejesus out of me because when you're in the mountains, there's not a lot of light up there, and the snow when it comes down, it is just like a giant white blanket, and it was just, it terrified me. So I get it. I get the song. I've lived it. I rode the storm out.
Gotcha. All right. So you're number 11, and believe it or not, my number 11.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah. This album is weird. It's like it only reached number 171. It's the lowest charting album of the Murphy era. But the strange thing is it actually went platinum. And of course we know why, is because High Infidelity, when that hit platinum, this album was one of those earlier albums that everybody kind of attached themselves to, which was kind of weird since Kevin didn't even sing on the album. But that's definitely a weird process there. It did have, Riding the Storm Out, and Son of the Poor Man is the great bonus track that I like on here.
Mm,
And if you remember, the Kevin version of Son of a Poor Man is on A Decade of Rock and Roll, and that's where I first heard the song, actually. So,
yeah.
it's good that we definitely have that still out there. I'd be curious to see which other songs he recorded for this album and if they ever will release those tracks. Because if you look on the credits for the album, he definitely wrote about two or three more.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to those. I mean, they're probably out somewhere. Who knows? They're probably on the internet. But so I want to know how they knew it was a full moon night in a Rocky Mountain winter if it was snowing out. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the funny thing is how Gary actually wrote that song, and yet Kevin, it always felt like he should have written them with him, but he didn't. He never got the credit
Yeah.
for it. Because the way
Hmm.
Kevin always used to talk about it all the time during the concerts, that's one of the things he always brings up about that song. Yeah,
Yeah,
he didn't actually write it, which is kind of weird in my opinion.
weird. All right, numero 10. We're getting into the top 10. And I got the we'll end the Michael Murphy era for me, which I think it's weird. It's funny. I don't know if you do this, but I look at other lists before I compile my own lists just for comparison purposes to see if I'm totally far off. And this one seems to, well, actually, a lot of people do just top 10 with REO. I think they discount the Murphy and Luttrell stuff or whatever. But this one shows up on the bottom of many lists. Lost in a Dream, or yeah, Lost in the Dream or Lost in a Dream?
In a dream, yeah.
It's in a dream. I can't. My handwriting. I'm so old. I still use pen and paper. So but I in going back and revisiting the catalog, this one I kind of I had a new appreciation for. I really liked it. I think of all the Cronin or the non-Cronin records, definitely the Mike Murphy ones. This one I enjoyed a lot. So definitely doesn't get the love that it's due. But I think going back to saying that Riding the Storm Out wound up going platinum, these Michael Murphy records, like after High Infidelity hit, maybe even before, maybe even with Tuna Fish. I'm a little bit older, so maybe you do or don't remember. But these records all went in the bargain bin. I mean, you'd go to pretty much any drugstore or whatever that carried, you know, cheap albums with that little nice price sticker on them or a cutout or whatever. You'd always find the Michael Murphy REO albums. And I don't know if they just repressed them and sold them cheap, but they were like everywhere and they were dirt cheap. So I think that might help propel the sales of a lot of them. And fans might have been disappointed. If you think about it, like as a young guy and you're starting to collect REO records, and then you get one and you're like, who's this guy singing? He doesn't sound like the guy I just saw in concert. But yeah, that was, I think, the case with a lot of these Mike Murphy records.
All right. Well, that brings me for Lost in a Dream. Mine is coming in at number 12. So they're all pretty much in that same area
Yeah.
like we talked about. The album reached number 98 on the charts. The two songs for me that stand out on this one is Down by the Dam. Definitely one of the highlights on the album. And another one, Wild as the Western Wind, which actually is sung by Gary, which is pretty cool, because Gary usually sang a song or two on a lot of the earlier albums. And that's something that phased out once Kevin came back into the
Yeah.
band. But yeah, so that album, to me it looks like it is the out of my list, it's the weakest of the Murphy albums, but the Murphy albums are all three right in a row, 10,
Yeah.
11, and 12, so they're all neck and neck in my opinion.
Number 9.
What do you got for me?
Uh I got some wheels. They're turning. Wheels are turning.
Wow.
I know you're probably like, oh, this is a sentimental sentimentally hated because it has the song I can't fight this feeling any longer. I don't know. It's like all those REO haters out there are gonna give me daggers now because I'm just gonna say it.
Hey,
Babe was the song that everybody said Styx was like, what is going on with Styx? But to me, Can't Fight This Feeling was the I don't know, it was the song that made REO Speedwagon just too. It was just, I don't know, man. It was, it's a great song on some level if you're in love. But I don't know, man. It's just too darn sappy for me. Too sappy. Rest of the album not bad. There's some great cuts on it, but I think this is the sort of the beginning of the end for the classic era REO. And I think it's probably the song that, again, like they semi joke that Babe is the song that broke Styx up. And granted, Styx had a couple albums after that, Cornerstone. But I think that Can't Fight This Feeling might have been the song where Gary Richrath just finally went, oh, man, dude, can't keep doing this. So, I'm happy that they had a hit. But man, when REO Speedwagon does "Can't Fight This Feeling" in concert,
Hmm.
I can't fight the urge to go to the bathroom. That's where I go.
Yeah, it's their second number one song on on this album. Their first song that broke this album really, double platinum. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say if it wasn't for that song, the album probably wouldn't have sold nowhere near as much. But like you said, everybody ran out and bought it. But it did have four top 40 singles. So, it's
Yeah.
definitely, an album that definitely, like you said, that's not exactly the song I would pick as the standout track for me because it was overplayed and, like you said, they play it every night in concert. But oddly enough, this album for me reached number three. It's my third favorite REO album. So that's gonna maybe ease the minds of some of our other REO Speedwagon fans. But for me, yeah, I mean, I love Live Every Moment. That's a great song that, it's amazing that that song hasn't had more accolades just for the lyrics alone. It's just such a great, inspirational song, Definitely live every moment, love every day. That's how you got
Yep.
to take life, man. That's how you got to do it. Kevin wrote a true, great song here that I just feel for some reason it just doesn't get its just due. And oddly enough, this album, like you said, it's another one in concert. They play, you know, just the one song from, which is odd. You very rarely hear anything else from this album. You know,
Yeah.
probably since Gary left, which is weird because yeah, you can understand Gary not wanting to probably play some of the songs on the album, but you figure Kevin would have liked to see some of the other ones on here probably.
Yeah, they
So.
they are they are a very cautious live band, I must say.
Well, at least they kind of finally dug in, like in the late '80s, after just before Gary left, they actually started what they called digging in the old deep bag of tricks. I remember hearing a King Biscuit concert from them, and they started really going back deep in the catalog, and were pulling out some rarities. At the time, Golden Country was great. That they started playing that on the Life as We Know It tour. So they actually started to go dig deep before Gary left, and then they've done a few songs over the years, but for the most part, they kind of keep to the same formaic trend that they always have. They don't take a lot of chances, just like you said, but they got
Yeah.
everybody still goes out and sees them. So
Oh yeah, I mean it's a great show. I mean it honestly, I think the last time I saw them, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, the set was almost a mirror image of the High Infidelity set, which is a great set. I mean, to me, that's the high point of their career. Like I get it, but it does kind of I do kind of scratch my head that they don't dig a little deeper sometimes. But hey, if it works, it works, right?
yeah, and then just leaving this parting thing here. My last thing on this album that I have was the underrated track I liked was One Lonely Night. That was just one of those slower songs, but I like it better than Can't Fight This Feeling. It just Can't Fight This
Yeah.
Feeling has been so overplayed, and One Lonely Night, it never really seemed like it got all the airplay that it should have gotten. But although it did reach on the charts there on the adult contemporary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I can't fight this feeling. I mean, I like Kevin's vocal performance. I think he does a great job. But I don't know. I'm not going to beat that horse. So let's go to number 8, shall
Hmm.
we?
Sure.
We're Don't Have a Cow, man. This is the Cow record. Is that what do you call it?
Ah, the Cow record, huh?
Just REO was the proper title, right?
Yeah, that's the one that Kevin came back in '76. That was his first album back.
Yeah, and this one, this is the couple of staples wind up on this one. You got Keep Pushing,
Hmm.
which is I think it's definitely in my top 5 favorite. You were talking about Messages. To me, that's just like a classic, arena rock. Keep pushing on, man.
Yep.
Just love that song. And of course, I believe our time's going to come. That's a pretty strong track. And The Flying Turkey Trot. Who don't love that song? I mean, to me, that was always a concert highlight. The Flying Turkey Trot. Wah, 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 wah.
Hmm.
You know, how was that? Was that a good turkey?
Yeah, considering that's such a short song, they kind of dropped that from the set. You figured that would be something they would have kept in there all those years.
I mean, that's you. Nobody plays that like Gary. I mean, that's just
Oh,
such
right,
a
right.
that Les Paul, that big Les Paul, just the way his, just the way he played it, the tone, everything. You're never gonna do that. It's great.
Yeah.
So I love that song. Love that song.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they
So
probably played it themselves probably since the early 80s, I would guess.
yeah, probably not.
And
So
it's
what
such
do
a,
you have?
like I said, well, I had this album, actually, believe it or not, the good old cow album, as you call it. I've had it at number 7.
Oh, so we're pretty close.
Yep, yep. Same songs. Keep pushing. I believe our time is going
Yeah,
to come with the two that really, out of the whole album, those are the ones that stand out. And Keep Pushing is probably like the only song they actually play off of it anymore. You'll definitely hear that one probably at a good portion of the REO shows. Kevin definitely likes that song and keeps it in.
yeah,
The album itself only reached as high as number 159, but you got to remember, um, he had just come back in the band, so they were just trying to, you know, try to see where they can go from there after picking up from the Mike Murphy era here.
yeah. I think this record does suffer a little bit for because of poor production. It really it
Hmm.
sounds very thin.
Yeah,
It, you know,
I tend to agree with
but
that one. It could have been a
yeah,
lot more, it could have been solid,
yeah,
more solid for sure.
yeah. Just very thin. And speaking of thin productions, this one's a little thin too, but not nearly as thin as the other one. We're gonna go number 7, REO 2, and I ranked this fairly high because um I don't know. I think it's significant. I think it's an important part of the catalog. It's the first record with Kevin Cronin. I mean,
Hmm.
this is where it all began. So
Right.
yeah, Golden Country. Your face is so red. I mean, great song. What's not to love about this record?
Yeah, this one is definitely, for their second album, it was actually pretty strong. It's just a shame that the radio didn't see it that way. But they actually got about 3 songs on this album that they still play live over the last few years. They'll stick certain songs in the set, believe it or not.
Like I never seen a woman who makes me feel like you do. Yeah, that's a such a great song. That one too. What's the other big one on there? That's a lot.
Music
Well,
Man.
Music Man, of
Yep.
course. Yeah, yeah. Good stuff, man. Very, it's strong material. Probably very sentimental to Kevin as well because it is his first record with the group. So yeah, I dig it.
Yeah, for me, it was pretty much nip and tuck there. For REO2 for me was number 8. So our 7 and 8, just between me and you, are right next to each other. These two were just flipped for us. But another this album actually went gold finally, and although it never charted, how often do you say that? Never charted, but yet it reached gold. So obviously that was probably one of those things like you had mentioned in the bargain bins and all the reprints, and it got enough copies sold to be certified gold. So you can't go wrong with that. And
Yeah, I think ultimately that this definitely benefited from it definitely benefited from the fact that they still did a lot of it in their live set. You
hmm
know,
yeah, because when Kevin came back, I don't think he probably played a lot of the Murphy catalog except for the stuff that he was wrote on riding the storm out. So they had dug back into this one, I'm sure, and they when he first came back in the band, and they dug into the few tracks that he wrote for riding the storm out, and then obviously for the Cow album. So they probably didn't have a lot of stuff to choose from. So that's why they went back and dug a lot of this stuff out.
6, number 6. Well, I'll give you my number 6, and it's the first record, the debut album. I love this record. and I just listened to the whole thing yesterday. As a matter of fact, I was really impressed with it, and I like it because it's raw. The band, they definitely kind of sound like a good old honky tonk bar band from the era.
Hmm.
Terry Luttrell, who's the lead singer, he went on to be in a band called Starcastle after this, and so yeah, I mean it's and do you know the story about? Did you read the story about whatever happened with Terry Luttrell?
No.
So urban legend has it that Terry Luttrell, the lead singer of REO Speedwagon, he was in a van with the band. They all got into an argument. They kicked him out of the van near a cornfield, and he gets out, goes and disappears into the cornfield, and literally nobody in the band ever spoke to him again. How
Wow.
crazy is that? Yeah, I know. It's like, what? Yeah,
Crazy.
yes. True, I don't know. Great story, yes.
Mm. All right. So for the debut album, I have them at number 9, actually. Um, Definitely sounds dated, but it's raw. It has this raw energy to it. Um, Obviously 157 Riverside Avenue, that's a song that they have played throughout their whole career through different times and things, and that's one that you may hear, down the road. You never know. They throw it in here and there. And Lay Me Down actually is one of these songs that I really like that I never really was that familiar with before. So that one stood out for me. Sophisticated Lady was known because it was on the Decade of Rock and Roll. That was one of the songs on there. It's definitely a solid enough album. If you want to listen to some good timeless rock and roll, even though it's got that energy that brings out the early part of the band. You can really see the fire in Rich Rath and how they really were hungry for success. And as we know, it took them a long time to reach the full success that they did.
Yeah, I mean, and they were one of those bands that really just they got there just by force of will, they just worked hard at it.
Hmm.
Actually, no, I did have that at number 5. That's yeah, that's a Rich Rath era record. And
And the last.
yeah, that ain't love. It's and again, I think this was actually a huge improvement over Wheels Are Turning. I really do. I think this was the last Rich Rath record, and man,
Now,
God, it's heartbreaking.
how do you mean? What do you give these REO fans why you feel it was a better album than Wheels Are Turning? Give us the rundown on it.
Probably because it doesn't have "Can't Fight This Feeling" on it.
Oh, come on.
I think that ain't love. I think that ain't love is a really strong song, actually.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I mean, in my dreams, that's another one I really liked on it as well. Again, I think that there was a few songs on here that had that were catchy, that felt a
Hmm.
little. It felt like they went back a little bit on this album. I felt like with Wheels Are Turning, they were really just kind of moving heavily towards the commercial zone. It's this album just didn't seem as grossly commercial. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I mean, you don't have to agree with me.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't get a heck of a lot of airplay. The album itself, I mean, like you said, it had That Ain't Love, which you know did pretty good on the charts there, and then In My Dreams, which was another one that I believe was in the top 20. But other than that, the rest of the album didn't really get any airplay, unfortunately, because there are some good songs on here that kind of hide in the weeds, as they say. And
Yeah, that ain't love is another one of those songs where it's like, why aren't they still playing that one? You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand. I mean, that's one I feel like that would still
Oh yeah, they
fit
play it.
fit in the set. Do
Yeah,
they really?
yeah. The last time I saw them, they played it. They've been
Oh,
playing it. Yeah.
yeah. See, I don't remember them playing that one, but that to me still. I think that song still holds up pretty well.
There was a few times over the last 10 years where they might not have played it for a tour or two, and you probably happen to just catch those tours, but they've been playing it pretty regularly.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Um, yeah, so number 5 for you, that's the same for me.
Look at
It's
that. It
it's
all
their
worked out.
yeah, it's their last gold album. It made number 28, and obviously, like we had mentioned, Rich Rath and Gratzer's final album. Two top 40 hits. The dark horse on the album I love is Variety Tonight, which was actually written by Neil Doughty. Great song. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but that's definitely they actually played it on this tour. Great song. Neil definitely wrote a gem there. And then the other ones that I would say that would stick out is Can't Get You Out of My Heart. That one, Tom Kelly and Steinberg, they both co-wrote that with Kevin. So
Well,
yeah,
that
I
that
mean,
that brings us to number 4. I bet you we're
yeah.
going to be. I think we're going to be dead on for the next. The next. I think we might be dead on for the top 5. That's my
Well,
that's my prediction.
well, I've got 4 albums left, but we got one difference because I had Wheels Are Turning in my top 3. So
Oh, that's right.
there's one
Okay.
album out of the ones that you got left that actually for me is a little bit higher up on the list here.
Well, I'm assuming it's this one. So I got for number 4. I got Good Trouble.
No.
All right. So number 4, I got Good Trouble, and that's the follow up to High Infidelity. I actually saw him on this tour. I saw him on the High Infidelity tour, and I saw him on the Good Trouble tour.
Hmm.
Um, you and I have actually talked about this record off air a few times. It's a I don't know. It's a weird record because I think that the problem is that too often people compare it to High Infidelity. Um, it's not a bad record. I think they did have to get pushed into the studio a little bit too soon to make this one, and it suffers for that a little bit. But because the songs just aren't nearly as strong as the stuff on High Infidelity. But overall, good album. Keep the Fire Burning. That was the big single off it, if I remember correctly. And I know it's still production values were good. I mean, it definitely sounded like, I don't know, if you think about like um Boston, and then Boston second album, it's like you could tell that they're very thematically, and kind of the flow is the same. I think you could say the same for this and High Infidelity. They're very similar in some ways, but this is sort of the inferior cousin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this album actually was my number 2. So obviously, I really like this album compared to the only one it didn't beat was my number 1, which we'll find out shortly what that is.
Yeah, it might be different than mine. I don't know, man.
Yeah, but obviously we've talked about this as being probably one of the it went platinum basically because everybody that bought High Infidelity was dying to see this album come out, so they all bought it when it first came out, I feel. Um, it's sad because it's probably one of the most underrated follow-ups just because it wasn't as strong as High Infidelity. I think a lot of people had it as a letdown. I know Kevin was having writer's block at the time. I remember talking to Bruce Hall. He did an interview with me, and I asked him, "Why do you guys never play nothing off this album anymore?" And he just said, "Kevin he just feels that this isn't his strongest, album. He just was going through a lot at the time, and he just wasn't happy with the way the album came out, unfortunately." But I look back at it and I go, "Wow, man, Keep the Fire Burning, top 10 hit." It's like it's sad the band doesn't even play that one that much anymore, hardly ever. They barely touched it since this album came out. And then for me, I really like Every Now and Then. That song is Gary wrote that one. Definitely, you could tell. It's definitely like the cousin to Take It on the Run, kind of in a way. Um, but Every Now and Then is definitely one of probably my favorite song on the whole album. And then that underrated track for this album. Kind of went with The Girl with the Heart of Gold. And the reason why I'll tell you is the interplay between Kevin and Bruce. Bruce actually wrote the song about his wife, and it's a good play between Kevin and him. They're alternating on verses and vocals, and it's just great to hear these two sing together. I don't know if you're familiar with the song yourself.
Yep. No, I don't
Yeah,
remember if they did that one live or not on the tour.
yeah, I'm not too sure on that one, but I know
I feel
the
like Bruce only gets one a show.
yeah,
You know,
and you
that's
know which
always
one that
that's
is,
it.
which
Yeah, we know
we'll
which one that
we'll
is.
be
Yeah.
talking about that one soon. But yeah, I mean Bruce is definitely a very capable vocalist. You know, he kind of reminds me of like Ben Orr in a way, how he never really got all the accolades for his vocals. Like Rick Ocasek always seemed to get all the glory for the writing and the vocals because he was like the main guy in the Cars. But you know, he Ben actually did a lot of the writing as well. And then the first album, he sings a lot of the songs on the first album. But getting back to this album, um, they definitely had some good songs on this album. I always liked the title cut, "Good Trouble," and "I'll Follow You" was another good one. A good, talking about Texas and everything there. "Back in My Heart Again," "Stillness of the Night." That's another Rich Rass song that really sounds pretty good. I really like that one too. I mean, in my estimation, this album does not have a bad song on it. But for one reason or another, radio didn't really embrace it, and unfortunately, the band themselves didn't really embrace it because they don't they refuse to play anything off of it.
Yeah. And that brings us squarely to number three,
Hmm.
which is Nine Lives on my list. And I'll tell you what I love about this record. I think this is one to me that was a very tough follow up because other than, well, yeah, I mean, you got really Nine Lives and Good Trouble are follow ups to what are my top two albums. I believe they're your top two albums, and certainly maybe not in that order. But I don't know. There's something about this record that the band seems to me like they just really rocked. Like it was just a good rocking album. They were really, as a band, kind of coming together. And this is the record that really set the stage for High Infidelity. Um, the songs were a little bit tighter, and you had that great Bruce Hall moment, of course, with Back on the Road Again. They did that really cool cover of Rock and Roll Music by Chuck Berry. And I don't know, I've always, this is one of those records that I throw it on and I just enjoy it. It's just a fun ride. It may not be as like hit prominent as a lot of the other records in the catalog, but I think it warrants its spot at number three.
Yeah, I think they got lucky with High Infidelity being the follow up to this one because if they didn't have a strong follow up, I think they were going to be in some trouble because from you can't tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. You go from that one and then you go to Nine Lives. There was definitely a drop off in it. No matter what you want to say about it, there was definitely a drop off. It went, obviously they sold double platinum for the piano album, but this one only went gold. Oddly enough, like you said, but it only reached number 33, which was close to what Tuna Piano reached on the charts at 29. But I just feel that album, its predecessor, was definitely a lot stronger. Most fans would agree with that one. But as far as Nine Lives goes, like you said, the Bruce Hall Back on the Road Again. But the song to me that really is probably the Gary Richrath masterpiece of the whole catalog is definitely Only the Strong Survive.
Yeah.
No doubt about that one. He took that song with him when he left, and he redid it with his band Rich Wrath, and he built that band around that song actually. And that song is definitely the highlight for me when I think of Gary Richrath and his writing credits. That's probably the strongest song he ever wrote. and it's definitely worth its weight in gold for sure. And then I like "Drop It" in Old Disguise too. That's another one of those songs that you never really hear anywhere, but definitely one of the highlights on the album.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know. You're right. It was Tuna Fish was a tough album to follow up, but I think overall the songs on Nine Lives are a little stronger as taken as a whole. I think Tuna Fish has some weak moments in it, but the thing with Tuna, which is leading into it, it's my number two. It's not my number one. Um, I mean the iconic songs. I mean, if the only, it's kind of like I feel like Can't Fight This Feeling, Dragged Down, Wheels Are Turning for me. I mean, Roll with the Changes and Time for Me to Fly. If the rest of the cuts on the album were just the band sneezing, it still would be a great record because those two songs are just such incredible songs. I mean, production wise, vocal performance, instrumental performance, just so strong. And then Say You Love Me, Say Goodnight. I mean, just a powerful, potent song as well. And it's the rest of the stuff. I don't want to say it's necessarily forgettable, but it definitely pales by comparison to those three cuts. I mean, those are, man. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I don't. I mean, I remember the first time I heard Roll with the Changes, just that intro. It's just so incredible. It's just like one of those songs from that era. Like as soon as you start to hear it, you just love going along for the ride. Like the beginning of Tom Sawyer or um, Boston's More Than a Feeling. There's just certain songs that have that intro that just pull you in, and then they just take you on that great ride. I mean, it's the kind of songs that make you just love rock music and fall in love with bands. I mean, to me, I think Roll with the Changes is as close to perfection in a rock song as you can get.
And I thought you were going to say "As Soon as You Are Able" and start singing it to you.
Well, he
Too
doesn't say it
close.
like it says, as soon as you are able. He always does. I love how but again, it goes back to Kevin Cronin's phrasing is such a vital component to this band. To sing that straight, just as soon as you are able and I'm willing, it just doesn't have the punch like just the accents that he puts on each one of those words. It's like, soon as you are able and I am willing. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just, that's some fist pumping rock and roll, baby. That's great stuff. That's
yeah,
why we're here today talking about REO,
yeah.
because songs like that.
Yeah, and that's one of those songs that definitely stands out in concert big time. That's one you
Yeah.
definitely always want to stick around. They always play it near the end of the show, but
Yeah.
nobody leaves before hearing that one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I got Tuna at number four because obviously I had other ones at two and three. So four, we're gonna agree on one, it looks like, but four for me was that one. Roll with the Changes being the best track on the album, and actually the second best track that I like the most, actually, probably because the other one's a little overplayed, so I always kind of give the underdog a one here. Say You Love Me or Say Goodnight, which you mentioned, which to this day I still can't believe why they never played that song live. What a killer song that would be to either end the set with before the encores or to play it as the last encore. I don't know why they don't do that one anymore. I mean, I know they used to do it.
Yeah, I feel like the when I saw him on the High Fidelity tour, that was the last song. I mean, I don't know for sure. I mean, the memory, we get old, Joey, and the memory changes. But yeah, I mean, it's just such a great song. Yeah, I always like it when you have like opening songs that just feel like an opening song because of the lyrics and everything. And songs that say something like good night or whatever. That, I mean, you think about Riding the Storm Out. I mean, it has that feeling of leaving. You're riding the storm out, you're going somewhere. Sticks, Come Sail Away. You're sailing away. It's sort of a finale. Flying Free as a Bird. All those types
Yeah.
of things.
No,
But
they'll
yeah, say
always,
say
yeah.
you love me, or say goodnight. I mean, to me, that would be, you're right. I think it would be a set closer, and then before the encores, and it would just end the evening on a real high note. Or it's
Yeah.
that, like I said, even if it was just the final one after the big ones, because it's got to be tough to follow up Riding the Storm Out. Like, what do
Well,
you play after that?
they usually end the set with Riding a Storm Out and then come back
Yeah.
for the encores most of the time.
Yeah.
So, all right, so yeah, so number 4 for me, number 2 for you, and let's get number 1 going here.
And I'm gonna keep on loving you. Yeah. You know, as much as I hate the ballad Can't Fight This Feeling, I love Keep on Loving You that much more. And I think Can't Fight This Feeling to me is the inferior little sister of Keep on Loving You, which is maybe the greatest rock ballad written in the era. Uh, just great elements, great guitar solo, great everything. But man, this particular record, so many highlights. The drum beginning to "Don't Let Him Go," to open up a concert. Kevin's vocal performance on that, "Take It on the Run," just the guitar playing on that, the singing on it. My favorite song when this record came out was that one. She doesn't like the tough guys. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is just one of those. This was such a great era for records. I mean, it felt like every arena rock band, Foreigner, Styx, Journey, Rush, they just all came out with such great records. And I don't know if it's because they all, you know, pushed each other. But man, I mean, even stuff like "Shaking It Loose," we're talking about "Say You Love Me" or "Say Goodnight." I mean, "Shaking It Loose" kind of falls in that same kind of, you know, I don't know, "In Your Letter." I mean, it's so. I mean, I could just go on. I could sing every song on this record.
Right.
Ooh, in your letter.
But we don't want to hear all that. So,
The old, and the Bruce Hall song, "Someone Tonight." Great song. Obviously, he's never gonna to have a song as good as "Back on the Road Again." But that was a great song too. I mean, if Bruce was going to be given a second song, they could have given him that one in a concert. You know what I mean? Come on, let's all have a petition to Kevin to let Bruce sing. Can you imagine if Bruce sang 3 songs in one evening?
he probably wouldn't have a voice left.
Yeah,
Poor Bruce.
the Bruce Hall Band show.
All right, but High Infidelity, obviously number 1. We both agreed on that one by a landslide here. Diamond album, the only Diamond album in the band's career. Um, Take It on the Run, probably the best song on the album in my take of it. And then if I pick an underrated song, I got 2. I'll go with "In Your Letter," which is just a great song, and also "Shaking It Loose" that you had mentioned. Those are just two songs that really stand out. And I know that they played "Shaking It Loose" pretty much up until the Wheels Are Turning tour. That was pretty much one of the last times they kind of played it, except when they did like the whole High Infidelity album. But you know, that's just a great song. That's a Gary song, obviously, "Shaking It Loose." As much as Gary's songs on the album were just as good. "In Your Letter," "Take It on the Run," "Follow My Heart," which he actually wrote with Tom Kelly again. I mean, they worked with Tom Kelly a couple times throughout their career there. And then Bruce gets to do "Someone Tonight," which was one of those songs that, it's like I said, there's not a bad song on the album. You
Yeah.
know, you can just go on and on about this album. The closer, "I wish you were there." Just so much good stuff here. You know, this is their masterpiece. This is the album that put them on the map, that finally gave them the thumbs up that, hey, you guys made it, man. This was the album, and they took it and ran with it. And they,
Yep.
obviously
They took it on the run. That's what they
yep.
did.
I mean, hard to duplicate an album like this. It was a once in a lifetime thing. They came out at the right moment, the right time, and they took full advantage of it.
Yeah, and it's weird when you think about how bands can never do this again. You know what I mean? Like I feel like all these bands from this era, they had like an album, just like that album, and it's like they just couldn't. Very few bands were able to have 2 of those records. AC/DC, Back in Black, and you never saw another one like that from them. I mean, they had other great albums, but there was nothing like Back in Black and REO Speedwagon, High Infidelity, Rush's Moving Pictures. We've talked about a lot of them. There's just some records that it just really stand out. Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, Police, Synchronicity. I mean, this era of music, that early 80s. I know it's a lot of people now are doing these 50-year anniversary lists, and they say, oh, look at all these great albums that came out in 72, 73. But man, early 80s, there were some good rock albums, man, good arena rock albums. And of course, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame still doesn't recognize that era for what it did for rock music and really keeping it on the charts. I mean, REO Speedwagon, do they deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. You think rock and roll. I mean, how do you not think REO Speedwagon? I mean, they were the quintessential rock band from the era. So, yeah.
And just like Styx too. Styx hasn't been in, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just strange. The Foreigner, is Foreigner in there? I don't think they're in there either.
No, Foreigner's not. Russian Journey made it, so yeah, who knows?
Yep.
Oh well.
That's another episode in itself. If you want to check out our list on that, we do have an episode up on here for that. And also, that concludes the REO Speedwagon. Definitely, this was a fun one. And got to go back and really listen to a lot of these earlier stuff that I wasn't really as familiar with. And man, it opened up my eyes and ears to a lot of new stuff that I will definitely keep checking out, because it definitely sounded like it was some, what people aren't making these days. Good old fashioned rock and roll.
Yeah, definitely the kind of stuff that made kids want to form bands.
And the sad part of it is a lot of these albums, like we were talking, they never really made a dent sales wise or airplay wise, and yet. It's good to have these albums to fall back on, because if everybody kept making all these great albums all this time, you would never even get a chance to go back and probably listen to a lot of this older stuff that actually still exists. That's really, really deserving, to be heard.
Yep. Yeah, and it's always good. It's always good for a band to have that record too. Where somebody goes, "Hey, man, what REO Speedwagon? What record would you recommend?" Well, High Infidelity. I mean, there's a couple other ones you could, but it's a great one. It's a great place to start. So
yeah, for anybody who doesn't have that one, that's where you definitely got to start if you have nothing by the band for sure, and then go from there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just to give everybody a quick rundown here, you can be found, which we're gonna put a link up there for your Turntable Tuesday, which is something that happens every Tuesday.
On Facebook, yes. Just become my friend, and you can see it. It's always posted to the public, so we enjoy that. And then I have a podcast, well, 3 podcasts, but the music one's called Music Connects People, The Night and Day, which is the interview archives. I've got some old stuff there, and then I have one called Bagel Logic, which is just me talking about things that are not related to music. So, if you just like podcasts of guys talking, that's a good one.
Yeah, so we'll get all those links up at the end here. So make sure you guys check them out, like them, subscribe to them, and obviously, give us those comments. We want to hear, what your take is on these albums, and what some of your favorites are that maybe we didn't mention. And that's what it's all about, giving everybody a chance to, let everybody know, hey, I love this album. There's like 4 great songs you didn't even mention. And that opens up the door. Pandora's box, so to speak, here.
There you go. You got it.
All right. Well, it was great having you on again, and we'll have to do this again sometime in the future.
As always, man. Always an honor to be with you, my friend. Right. Or as Lawrence Gowan says, thank you, Joseph.